listening to the Autism 411 podcast with Dr. Tamara Moodie from the South Florida Autism Charter School.
And welcome to another edition of the Autism 411 podcast here from the South Florida Autism Charter School. I'm John Rogger, alongside your host, Dr. Tamara Moodie. How are you, Dr. Moodie?
I am well. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Mr. Rogger.
Well, we're always glad to do so. And we have another exciting podcast for our listeners today. This one getting the chance to share some knowledge about ABA therapy and having a therapist in the home.
Yes, I've always been a big believer that, that village. You're going to hear me talk about this village every single time you hear me on this podcast. And I think the therapists have a big spot in that village. With a great therapist, so much can be accomplished by your student. And I have one of the most amazing master level behavior analysts that I've ever worked with here today that I would love to kind of pick his brain a bit, and hopefully he could share some of his expertise.
And who is with us today?
Frank Rodriguez, who have worked with me for many years. I'm sure Frank is going to tell you how long that has been, but he's been a part of my village for a very long time. And an amazing teacher, amazing therapist, and just a good man. Hello, Frank. I'm so happy to have you here with me today. How are you?
Good. Likewise, Mr. Moodie.
So why don't you introduce yourself and just let folks know what you do, and then we could talk about how we met and how this awesome relationship that we have has developed over the years.
Sure. My name is Frank Rodriguez. I'm a behavior analyst, and I work for SFAX as a consultant. I've been doing it for about 4 years, and I also was a teacher at SFAX for about 4 years as well.
And so you're keeping something secret. So if you add the 4 and the 4, that's 8 years. But I've known you well before then. We have a history. So you all know that's listening today. Frank and I met years ago when I was the director of the private school. That he was one of the teachers there, and I was so pleased when Frank came and applied to be at SFAX when we first opened, and he stayed with us for a couple of years. One of the best instructor I've ever had, still is. And I remember the day he came and told me that, he really loved working with his population, but he would like to go and try something different. I was like, no way, you have to come back. So when I found out that Frank was, he was now a master level behavior analyst, and who wouldn't want Frank to be back, because he knew the students already. We had history working together. So in total, we've worked together for
I would say about 16 years.
16 years now. And anyone who's worked with me past 4 years, I would say we have that 4-year itch, that after 4 years, no, I think I've had enough of Dr. Moodie. So anyone who has worked with me worked in this field for past 3 years, really is a gifted person, because the burnout rate for working with this population is super high, and I'm so happy that you're with me here today. So I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to talk about home programs, but I also felt that you'd be the best person to talk about home program as well as school program, because we've been doing this together for so long. I haven't been in a home for about maybe 17 years now. I haven't done home programs, but I know that you're still doing those. And one of the things for me that I struggle with, and maybe you can help me with this, is that I feel like if I'm doing A, B, and C at the school setting, the parents should be able to do A, B, and C at home as well. Maybe a little bit different, so the students could generalize, but we should be on the same page.
Yeah.
So what's your view on that?
Yeah, that's something that I see quite often, that the behavioral programs at home, they rarely use any feedback from the IEP that all the students have. So that's something that I would encourage all the parents to have in mind when doing a behavioral program at home, or when doing the initial assessment, to bring that up to the behavior analyst, so they can get involved and have the same behavioral programs that they have at home, match what the parents and the teachers are doing in the school.
Mm-hmm. And I know schools like ours that were so ABA infused, from the minute a child come out of their car, we're encouraging communication and so forth. How do you foster those relationships in the school that may not want therapists there. Like, I personally don't think it's the right setting for therapists from the home to come into the school, but I do believe that they should come and see what we're doing. I think if for our setting it's difficult because we're 3-to-1 ratio. We have a lot of us in the classroom already. Bringing a therapist to work with the student while in the classroom, I think it will be difficult if every parent wanted it. But so if how can they get to do that in the, like, what would the benefit be if a therapist just come and observe and bring it back in the home? Like, what is the benefit? Like,
I mean, it goes back to like a continuity of services. Like, that way the therapist can see whatever is working at school and then apply it at home. Because we often get that problem. I mean, me, for example, as somebody that works here as a consultant but also works at home with parents, I get a lot of he doesn't have this behavior at home, or he doesn't have this behavior at school. So I'm like, there is something that is like wrong.
Yeah.
And we need to work in terms of like, okay, whatever is working at school, we need to do it at home. And if something is working at home and it's not working at school, we need to like kind of like get that for kind of like the home program at the school to be on the to be together and to be on the same page, because it doesn't benefit the student if, okay, like I come to school and I go to the toilet at school, but then when I go home, like I don't use the toilet. So I mean, what's going on that we're doing this right at school, but we're not doing it at home?
Yeah, and I mean, you have to say, but sometimes it's the audience. Our kids know who they can or they should or should not do certain things with. It's also, I think it plays into the reinforcement as well. Like, what is reinforcing at school or what's reinforcing at home that's not reinforcing at school. But if I was a parent, since I have not done home program in a very long time, how would I even start? My child just got diagnosed, right? And I want to have this ABA house. Like, what would be the first thing that you feel, your professional, feel like a parent should be looking for? Because I mean, I have my own views. I think, and maybe you could tell me if you disagree, but I just believe that whoever is coming in your home has to be a part of the village. For me, it's so important. Like, I know parents go and they get therapists from these different companies. I just feel consistency is important. Having that person buy into the home, be a part of. When I did home program, I felt like I was a part of everybody's home that I went into. I feel like if you're a therapist, you have to be flexible. And you have to be flexible minded. I am not one. I never did. And if you talk to anyone who I did a home program with, I never taught around the table. Like, that was never a thing for me. If, I would teach around the dining room table. I would teach outside by the pool. I would teach out, like, wherever it is, because we're home. Yeah. And I always felt that there needs to be a separation from home and school. Not everybody does it that way. And I'm not saying one way is right from the, but how does a parent, how do you decide on how that is supposed to look like, what that's supposed to look like?
I mean, you have to take into consideration kind of like the dynamics of the home. Do you have any siblings? Are the siblings on board with the therapy? Are the siblings disruptive? Are the siblings younger, older? How many people live at home? Also, in terms of the therapist, sometimes it's not just about the qualifications of the therapist. It's like how does the therapist, how do they match with your child?
Yeah.
I have worked with like incredible therapists, and if they're not the right match for a child, like the progress is not there.
Yeah, I could see that happening. It's almost as if it's because I said they're part of the village. If they are not going to be able to be a part of that village, I get it. But I believe, and you're probably gonna kick me by me saying that. I also feel like when a child goes home, they should be a child. Like, if they're in a school like ours, and let me just make sure I'm saying this correctly. I have no problem with home programs. I think home programs are important to generalize skills being taught in the school setting at home. I think that there needs to be that follow through. But I also feel like, and that's one side of what I believe. The other side of what I believe is that If my child is learning that this is a car, and you're gonna say point to the car, and my child is gonna point to the car at a table at school, when they go home, it should be pointing to an actual car, like, because it should be taught in more the natural environment. So I understand you're saying about you have to look at the dynamics, but I just feel like you can get so much more out of a child if they're not sitting around a table for another 3 hours like they were earlier at school.
Yeah, personally, I don't believe actually that, like, the home program should be an extension of the school. Like, like you say, like, once they're at home, they should be allowed to be, kids.
Yes.
Like, you should work on other skills other than, academic skills once you get home, like socialization skills, play skills. Play skills are incredibly important. And it doesn't get done a lot.
One of the things that parents said to me, a parent have always said to me over the years, was that I can't take a shower, Dr. Moodie. How do I take a shower? I can't even go get the mail because I have to be keeping an eye on little Johnny. And in my mind, those are some of the things that therapists could be working on when they're in a home program, like you said, teaching our student how to play on their own, how to be independent on their own, how to engage themselves, so mom could actually wash her hair without having him sitting in the bathroom with her while she wash her hair. So what would that look like though?
I mean, play skills are important in terms of like you say, it gives the parents a little bit more freedom to do all the other stuff that they have to do, like a shower, cook, attend to the other siblings. So if you have a therapist at home, it's very important for the therapist to use that time in terms of okay, we're going to teach you play skills, does your child like basketball, we're going to teach you to play basketball, by yourself. So when you're when mommy is taking a shower, you can, you can be outside in the backyard, playing basketball, shooting hoops, or, working on a puzzle, working with Legos, doing things that are going to keep the child occupied, mm-hmm. and that are beneficial to the child, but they're also beneficial to the parents in terms of giving the parents some freedom to do the home.
Yeah, and to be a parent to the other children in the home as well. So back years ago, 20 plus years ago, when I did a home program, one of the things that I liked was the flexibility from the parents that I worked with, that I was able to do walks. And I found that I got a lot done when it was being very casually taught. When it wasn't so structured. I don't know, we hear all the time that we're supposed to be structured and we're supposed to keep our kids, on these routine and these schedules. But for me, I remember when I did it, I was more successful when I just tried things on a whim. I went with what was happening at that moment with our children. So if a parent now would like to start a home program and they'd like to find a person like you, how do they go about doing that? Because I get phone calls all the time. Dr. Moodie, I need to find a good therapist. Dr. Moodie, I need someone to come into my home. Is it difficult to find therapists, trained therapists? How, I'm trying to figure out, if someone is listening, and they just got the diagnosis for their child, should they be looking for an ABA person right away? Should they be getting trained themselves to do it themselves? What do you recommend? And again, folks who are listening, this is just, our opinion. There's no right or wrong answer here. We just want to share our experience and who I consider to be some of the best in the community. And I believe that Frank's opinion and his expertise and his experience is really beneficial to all of us.
I mean, I would definitely recommend finding an ABA program. I mean, that's one of the first things that I would do. Finding an ABA program. There's a lot of information out there, and trying to find an ABA program that matches your child's specific needs. But also, I would recommend for every parent to get as much information for themselves to train themselves to be therapists. In my experience, the most successful programs that I have witnessed is when parents are very trained and very flexible in terms of working with the child themselves. I mean, you can't just leave it up to the behavior therapist and the behavior analyst. And once those individuals are out of your house, then you're like, okay, I don't know what to do now. Like, you're completely helpless.
Yeah. I remember when I did home program, I would like assess the student, and I always had other folks that was a part of the home program depending on how many hours we were given our students. So I may do like 4 hours Monday and Wednesday. Another person from the same company would do like 2 or 3 hours. It just depends, right, on the student and their age, of course, and if the child was in school, the amount of hours that we were able to give. And I remember a couple of the things that we first started out with is like communication, social skills, positive behavior, independent play, and daily living skill. We did some cognitive skills as well as we participated in the everyday routine. And now that I look back, I thought that the 3 out of everything that I just said that was super important was communication. And I think that the everyday routine, like, getting up, brushing your teeth, doing those things. The life skill, of course, is really good. And the social skills, like you said, is also very good. Not to say that behavior isn't good as well, but I remember I didn't really have a lot of kids who had behaviors in the home, because I felt like those other skills were, they knew how to play independently. They had a form of communication. So we didn't really see a lot of behaviors because of that. Is that still the way how things are? Like, how do you guys start a program? Do you assess the student and then come up with the skills, or just the parents tell you what they would like you to work on in the home?
I mean, I typically, when I go to a home, like I do like the initial assessment, and we kind of like have an idea, so we can have an idea what the child needs, and we come up with some goals. But I also always try to involve the parents. Okay, like, I believe that these goals are important, but I also want to know like what goals are important to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if parents don't buy into what you're doing,
oh no, definitely, like everybody in the house has to be involved.
Yeah, because I feel like just like teachers can, parents also can undo everything that we are doing in the home. And if that's the case, it just really makes it difficult. And then you will see the lack of progress. So what can a parent do to really maintain the program? Like, what would you suggest that they do? Like, for example, I'll just use me for a second. I've been telling folks that I don't have a child with autism, but I do have 3 young children at home. And I can't be the therapist for my kids. I have to hire outside folks to come in and do tutoring with my kids, because I think they would drive me crazy, right? So a parent who has children or a child with autism at home, and it's having such a difficult time teaching their kids, what would be like the thing that you would tell them to do to be able to do it? Because they can't just leave it for that therapist to come in and teach. They also need to play that role.
Definitely observe the sessions.
Perfect.
I mean, I understand that, like, as a parent myself, like, sometimes you don't have enough, a lot of time. And, I've seen it happen way too often where parents, like, when that person comes into the house, it's like, okay, you're going to be working with my child, and I'm going to, like, kind of like do everything else that I need to do. I would recommend to observe the sessions. I mean, at least if you do only for half an hour, observe the sessions, take notes, and at the end of the session, ask questions. I work with plenty of parents that at the end of a session, I ask them, do you have any questions for me? And they never have a question for me. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure, like, I did a lot of things. You should have plenty of questions. And again, in my experience, the more questions the parent asks, the more they observe the therapist working with the child, the more successful the program is going to be. And the more prepared those parents are going to be once they don't have the therapist helping them.
Once they don't have the therapist. And I think that it's, folks out there, it's so important that you know that you are the strongest, most reinforcing person for your child. So sometimes things that your child will do for you, they may not necessarily do for the therapist, and vice versa, depending on how, those kind of motivation, how motivated the child is. So you brought up words like reinforcer, we talked about motivation, we talked about generalization. So for folks who may not understand what it is that we're talking about, what do you mean by reinforcement?
I mean, reinforcement is basically anything that your child does that you want him to like or her to replicate and do it more often. You want to like find the things that the child likes, and as soon as they do the behavior that you're expecting, or the behavior that you kind of like want your child to do, like immediately present that item or action to them. I mean, it can be a hug, it can be a kiss, it can be a toy, it can be just social praise in terms of like saying, like good job, son. So anything that the child would like, you want to use that to your advantage. So as soon as the behavior occurs, you want to like present that so-called reinforcement.
Okay. So your paycheck is kind of like your reinforcer in some ways, going home and your house is clean, your spouse cleaned the house and you don't have to go home and clean as a reinforcer, because most likely you will do whatever it is that you did to get that kind of treatment. Generalization. So I brought that up earlier, but you're the expert here. How important is generalization?
Generalization goes back to like what we were talking about earlier in terms of like having therapists observe what's going on at school and vice versa. So you want whatever is happening in one setting happens in another setting. Mm-hmm. and the same goes to like if your child performs certain actions for a therapist and then he or she doesn't do it once that person leaves, there's no generalization there. You want them to like, okay, once the therapist leaves and I said to my child, okay, come and sit down, he will listen to you. So that's kind of what generalization is. Like the child will listen to like everybody.
Okay. And I did a podcast a couple weeks ago that I spoke about ABA. And I mentioned to our parents that, or the folks that's listening, that ABA is, for me, it's like the study of the human behavior, right? That ABA, to me, is not one of those hidden gems. It's what we do every day. You walk up to someone and the person politely say hello, you say hello back, you just reinforce that person by responding back, right? And then we could get in the whole technical terms of it. I didn't really do that, but I wanted them to know that ABA is what we do. We do it. We just don't realize that is what we're doing, and we may not understand the name of what we're having a conversation here. We're doing a lot of interverbals here. We're going back and forth, right? But in your words, why ABA? Like, why become, you were an awesome teacher. You still are. Like, why did you decide to what makes a person want to be a master level behavior analyst, and why ABA? Because there's all these different treatments that's out there. So I just gave you two questions. So
I mean, I've always, even when I was a teacher, I was always like a firm believer that, I mean, in order for a child to learn, they have to perform, they have to like have certain like skills, like, attending skills, so to speak. Like, is a child able to sit down? If you have a child that doesn't sit down, even if the child is really smart, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to like teach that child as effectively as you will if the child is sitting down and is listening and is paying attention to you. So I've always believed that like behavior is very important in terms of like learning skills.
Okay.
So you have to get those behavior skills, like really reinforced per se, and then before you actually start like teaching and be able to like for the child to like really take advantage of that teaching that he's getting.
So in terms of like, so is that your reason why ABA? Because I'm just curious, like, there's all these things that's out there that you could actually have gone into if you really wanted to do that, but you chose to be a master's level. I know that the reason why I wanted SPAC to be an ABA infused school, using the methodology here, is because I believe in the science. I love data taking. I love to look at. I think that it shows the change when you can see change in the data collection part of it and so forth. And I just think it's the fact that it's of course scientifically, proven. But was there something?
Well, to me, it goes back to I was going to be a math teacher, and I actually did it for a few years. My initial master was going to be in psychology, and ABA kind of is it's kind of like where psychology and math meet. So it's very data driven, very data oriented. You can observe in terms of you can actually see the progress, and you can see when the progress is stagnating and you're not advancing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually go back to the point where we can modify certain things in the program, and we can get that progress going again. That I feel in other areas of psychology you don't really get, especially for our children.
For our children, definitely.
Many of them are nonverbal, so they can verbalize what they're feeling. So you have to rely basically on their behavior, and that goes back to observing and taking data.
So that observation part of it, I get it. I never thought of it that way. I'm gonna take that though.
Okay.
It's like putting math and psychology together, because you can observe the behavior with our nonverbal children. So from there, you can decide on collecting the data can show you or tell you, well, little Johnny is crying around 11:30 every day, and there's no particular reason. Well, now little Johnny used to have lunch at 11 when he was in elementary school, but the data show you now he's in middle school and lunchtime is later. He could be hungry because that internal clock that most of our kids have is saying I'm supposed to have lunch at 11 o'clock, and that could be the reason. Yeah, that never thought of it that way. So I started to do some research, because I know we were going to be talking, to kind of see in hiring a therapist, since you're in there and you're in the workforce out there going into folks' home. If I'm new and I'm trying to figure out what should I be looking for, so one of the things that I said, if I was a parent with autism, or has a child with autism, one of the things that I'd be looking for is, and you could tell me if my top 5 is what you would look for, someone with some experience to come into my home. I would want to know how committed is this person, as in, are they able to give me the hours that I need, because I know my child needs consistency. I also would be looking at speaking, if I could speak to families that this person has worked for before. I think it's important. And what are our boundaries? What happens if I go on vacation? Am I gonna lose my therapist if I go on vacation? I know that this field has had an upward tick since the pandemic, since a lot of folks have been needing people to come into their home. But what happens when we go back to reality and kids start going back to school? What is going to happen to our kids? So knowing what people do when it comes on to, time off and sick time and so forth, I think is important. But more than anything else, I think I would want to know, how do you deal with misbehaving? What's your feel on behaviors? Would you add anything else to that when you're looking for a therapist?
Definitely. I mean, you definitely want to know what previous experience does a therapist have with a behavior. Mm-hmm. and it also goes back to not only a therapist, I would say also a behavioral analyst.
Yes.
As a behavioral analyst, if I'm working in a case where I don't have experience, for example, I don't have a lot of experience with feeding programs. Mm-hmm. So if I feel like your main concern is a feeding program, I usually tend to recommend you somebody else.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that kind of okay, what is your expertise? What is your previous experience? And in terms of therapists, you want to know that, and you also want to kind of have an idea what's their commitment like. Yeah. Especially therapists tend to be, on the younger side. Most therapists are very young. Don't be shy to ask, are you going to college? What are you studying? Again, this goes back to like, this is not like my professional opinion, or it's like the Bible, in terms of like, okay, do this. But in my experience, if you have a therapist that is working, if it's going to college and it's like studying, wants to become a special education teacher, a behavior analyst, or a psychologist, you can tell that they are committed to what they're doing, and they want to help your child, and because that's something that they're planning to do for the rest of their lives. And if you have a therapist that is like, I'm doing this, but I'm studying to be a financial analyst, might not be the right fit for you.
Yeah. Because
their commitment is to something else. They are not really committed to learning the science of ABA and to like implement programs like, the right way.
Much of what I look for in hiring a teacher in our school. Great point. I want to end by just letting parents know, and I don't know if Frank has anything, last words to say, but I want to say this, reinforce your therapist, parents. Not saying to go buy them a Jaguar or anything like that, but let them know that they're doing a good job. Ask them about the sessions. Just like your kids need reinforcement, your therapists need reinforcement too. And I don't know, when I did home program, I love when parents ask me, so how was the session? Did anything new happen today? It wasn't just me jotting down my notes and just, bye, I'm done. Would you think that is good?
Yes, that's a good way. And also, show the therapist that whatever they're doing, that you're also doing at home. Like, therapists love to see that type of continuity of services. Like, okay, like I'm working with the child in poetry training, and but as soon as I leave the home, the parent puts a diaper on. That's a slap in the face of the therapist, honestly.
Yeah. No, I see that. I've seen it over the years, like with, a child has a behavior at school, and then, you're telling the parents that, little Johnny bit his classmate today. At the same time, the parents are putting McDonald's in their hand, and yeah. I get it. I've lived through that. I still live through that. Parents, that's a no-no. But I do believe that you're saying is encourage or overlap. Let parents see that, let the therapist see that you are, overlapping on something.
Yeah, that you're doing like what the therapists are doing, because they can see like, okay, like this parent really cares.
Yeah.
And you want to keep your therapist motivated.
Yeah, I agree.
This is a job with like a really, really high turnover ratio, so you want to keep your therapist like very motivated.
Perfect. All right, Frank, so happy that you came on. Would you be able to come on again? Because folks are gonna
definitely.
Folks are gonna have questions, and if they have questions, they know that they can reach out to me at info@sfax.org, and I'll be able to get you in touch with Frank. And of course, we have a very active social media with our Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. And if you'd like to hear more of Frank or myself, please tune in, because we were going to be doing more of this, and we've been successful because we have Frank a part of our SFAX village. He's a part of our team, and we would love to be able to help you out there. So if you have any questions about what we talked about today or any input, feel free to contact us.
Well, that was exciting, Dr. Moodie. Always a pleasure to be able to hear, what's going on in our community, people that we see on a regular basis, but a lot of folks that are listening may not get a chance to talk to, and that is, the ABA therapist. Yes. If they haven't done so yet or haven't signed up to get an ABA therapist, it's good insight to know other things you need to do to have the right therapist in your home.
Yes, I think that it's important to have a great therapist in your home. I'm sure you heard when Frank says, it's that fit. It's like, you can't just, if your child is allergic to certain dogs, you can't just go get that dog and bring him in your home. It would be not a right fit for the family, because your son will always be sick or your daughter will always be sick. Not to compare a therapist with a dog, but it's really, 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 really important that you have the right people in your home, and that you don't take it for granted, and that you should never be that desperate that you just pick the first person who come into your home. I feel like it should be an interview process. And there's really important things that you need to look at that Frank and I spoke about. And again, I really think that home programs are beneficial. I think it's just in the manner in which it's implemented. And of course, therapists have to work with what they have. Not everyone has like a swing or a backyard that the child can go out and work. But you work with what you have and you do your very best. And at the end of the day, it's when someone comes into your home, it's to give them the skills they need to be independent individual in the future. And if that's not happening, then you have the wrong person in your home.
Another thing that we didn't really touch upon, but I'm sure we will in a future podcast, is when you're picking an ABA therapist, there's also, the situation with your type of insurance when you're looking at these companies, because there's many different companies out there, and there will be ones that, for folks that are in the lower income brackets that work with Medicaid and CMS. There's ones for the higher income bracket that you have a private pay, or ones that you have a corporate company that you have insurance through. So each one has its own different way of being paid for. So, and I know that that was one of the topics you said coming later in our programs that we're going to talk about is how to deal with insurance. So
how to deal with insurance. I'm planning on bringing a social worker in to talk to you folks later on in one of our podcasts, and parents are paying, if they have to pay out of pocket, it could run them a lot of money. It's like sending a child to college, so it's really important that people understand the services that they can get, and hopefully with my upcoming podcast, I'll be able to provide those information to my listeners.
Very good. Well, Dr. Tamara Moodie is the host of this program, Autism 411. And again, you can find this and many other podcasts that we've done up on our website at sfax.org. And again, if they want to ask you any questions or if they want to reach out to Frank as well, how can they do so?
So if they'd like to reach out to Frank or myself, info@sfacs.org. Feel free to shoot us a quick email. We'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Or if you follow us on any of our social media, you'll be able to send us messages that way. I like to joke that I answer all my emails, which I do, but I answer my phone even faster. But yes, I'm not going to be giving out my phone number on our podcast. But yes, if you go to our website, you'll be able to see ways that you can get in touch with us as well.
Very good. Dr. Tamara Moodie, and this is Autism 411. Thank you so much, and we look forward to another edition coming soon.
Thank you.
This has been the Autism 411 podcast with Dr. Tamara Moodie from the South Florida Autism Charter School. To learn more, visit sfacs.org.